When it comes to project management in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, we have an identity crisis. What do I mean by that? Believe it or not, most AEC organizations, both public and private sector, they can't even give you a list of their project managers if you ask them for it. They literally don't know who they are. And one of the reasons for that is because as AEC professionals, we have a job like we're an engineer or an architect, right? Or a surveyor. But we're also a project manager. It's kind of something else that we also do, which means if you were to go into your system and look up your PMs, it might be hard to find them. And that is not good, because that means you can't invest in your PMs, you can't develop them, you can't retain them. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you some things that you can do, some questions you can ask, some steps you can take to start to not only identify your PMs, but to put together a process and a system to make sure that you can always identify a list of project managers in your organization within a few minutes. I'm Anthony Fasano, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast. So in this episode, I want to talk about something that I call the PM identity crisis in the AEC industry. I wrote an entire chapter about this in my forthcoming book entitled Beyond PM Training: How to Build a Scalable AEC Project Management Ecosystem. The book will be out this summer, and the whole idea behind the book was we do a lot of work at EMI with AEC organizations on helping them build better project management development programs, more effective project managers. And to do that, you can't just do training, you have to do a lot of things, right? You have to have their job descriptions, their career paths. You have to have mentors in place for them, tools, templates, and software, right? A good onboarding process. And part of that job descriptions and their roles and their career path progression is really this whole idea about the identity of a project manager in our industry. So what do I mean by that? If you're listening to this or watching this video, you are a design professional, maybe an engineer, maybe an architect. Are you a project manager? Or are you not a project manager? Or are you also a project manager? That's the challenge in our industry. And it's amazing that we have this challenge, and it's pretty, I would say, rampant across the industry, but it is a problem. So let me ask it to you this way. How many project managers work in your organization? Take a minute and really think about it. Do you think that someone in your organization can answer that question within 5 minutes? Chances are, if your organization is like most of the ones that we've worked with, they probably can't answer that question. In fact, the response that we usually get sounds something like, well, give us a few days and we'll try to figure it out. But think about it this way. We are in a project-driven business, right? Your organization's success, and of course, the satisfaction of their clients or their customers, and really their reputation and their bottom line hinges on projects being delivered on time, on budget, and with quality. And yet, despite this, many organizations don't actually know who their project managers are. That's a huge red flag. Because we say this all the time, that project managers in AEC organizations are really drivers of success, and especially financial and bottom line success in private organizations. Think about that. If your organization doesn't know who their project managers are, then how can they possibly evaluate their performance? How can they support their PMs? How can they offer them training, coaching, career path growth? More importantly, how can you plan for your firm's backlog, right, or future growth? It's like trying to scale a building without really knowing which beams are load-bearing, right, and how to add on to it. Where do you go from here? So another analogy that I like to use to kind of emphasize the importance of this knowing who your project managers are is think about a baseball team. A baseball team requires pitchers. And if you're not familiar with baseball, a pitcher is the person that stands on the mound and throws the ball to the batters or pitches the ball to the batters. Now, everybody on a baseball team needs to be able to throw the ball, right? Some people play shortstop, some people play third base, and they have to throw the ball. But you can't look at a baseball team and say, we don't know who our pitchers are. Everybody can throw the ball. We can use anybody. No, that's not the way it works. You need to have someone who has the actual skill of pitching. They're your pitchers. So imagine an AEC organization saying, we don't really know who our project managers are. Anyone can manage projects. No, that's not true at all, just because you're in a project-driven industry. So in my book, I have a whole checklist of questions that your organization can go through to really pinpoint your PMs. But today, I want to give you a couple things that you could do at a high level to think through it. And again, I realize that you may be the person responsible for this in your organization, or maybe you're just a PM in your organization. And maybe you can bring this back to them or start a conversation around this episode and this identity crisis idea with your organization. But one thing you can think about is some organizations use software of some sort that allows them to, manage their projects in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a scheduling software or the software they do their timesheets in, which allows for time tracking, maybe even earned value management. And sometimes within that software, there is an employee directory and there is a designation as project managers. So you may be able to go to the software and generate a list of project managers in your organization. And that's one way that you might be able to do it. Another way that you may be able to do it is working with your HR or human resources team to generate a roster of employees and doing a search on job title or job description and looking for the words project manager. Now, the tricky part about doing it this way is a lot of companies see project manager as a secondary job on top of your primary job. So for example, for me, I was a civil engineer in design, but I also manage projects. So most likely my job title would have been civil engineer, or some companies will use like engineer 3, right? Or surveyor 3, or whatever it may be in your organization. The project manager doesn't get captured in my actual title, right? So the HR process may not work for you, right? So you have to kind of explore the different ways that you may be able to figure out who the project managers are. Now, the one recommendation that I'm going to make to you here in the episode today is you should work really hard on clearly identifying PMs and having some kind of naming structure that will make it easier for you to look up in a matter of minutes who your project managers are. And the recommendation that I'm going to make is, if you have people that solely manage projects in your organization, and some organizations do, usually larger organizations do, well, that's easy because their title is going to be project manager, period, right? If your organization has project managers who also do other things, like their primary job is a civil engineer or a landscape architect or a building architect, then can you give them a secondary title that reflects project management? So for example, maybe I'm a civil engineer / project manager, and that's my official job title. And within that job title, I have a description associated with the civil engineering component of my job, and I have a job description related to the project management portion of my job. Doing this makes it much easier for you to look up at any time who your project managers are. And then what you can do is you could take it one step further. Then you can develop a career progression for project managers in your organization, like junior PM, deputy PM, PM, senior PM. Then you can start to classify PMs by those different experience groups. So now you might be able to go into your system and just generate project managers and say, okay, we have 100 junior PMs, 50 deputy PMs, 25 PMs, and 5 senior PMs. Now, why is that valuable? Well, that's valuable for a number of reasons. Number one, when you have younger PMs, you need to develop them, right? So if you're running foundations courses, we'll usually run foundations course and advanced courses for our clients that we custom design. If you have 100 junior PMs, you know that you're going to need to run a number of foundation courses over the next year or two to get them upskilled, just with the basic PM skills, right? But at the same time, if you have 25 maybe senior PMs, you may want to run an advanced course as well in 2025, and then maybe you won't need one again until 2027. So in terms of your training and learning and development needs and planning, that can be very helpful for that. The other thing that this can be helpful for is mentoring. You want to have some of those more experienced PMs mentoring some of the less experienced PMs, and by seeing how they're broken down, you may be able to set them up and organize a way to create that mentoring avenue. Even if it's informal, it will allow you to do that. The other thing that this is important for is hiring. If you have an idea of a project workload that you're going to have over the next year or two, you can get a feel for how many project managers you're going to need and at what levels to tackle those types of projects. And by being able to pull a quick inventory, you can see what that looks like. Maybe some of those senior PMs are going to be retiring soon and they need to be replaced. Or maybe you need to fast track some of your PMs to really grow them in their careers because of the projects that you have that are coming down the pike in terms of what's next. So I hope that what I've kind of stressed to you here through this episode is the importance of really understanding what a project manager is in your organization and who your project managers are. Literally a list of the names of the people, who they are. And if you can take it one step further, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, maybe you can start with that. If you can then classify those project managers into different experience level buckets, like I said, junior PM, PM, senior PM, that will really help you in terms of your learning and development efforts for your PMs, your project resourcing, and creating those mentoring avenues that can really help your less experienced PMs grow their experience, but also become really PMs that can deliver top service. Because at the end of the day, this is why project managers are so important in your organization. Number one, they are driving your bottom line. If you deliver projects and they're responsible for the profitability of those projects, well, guess what? They are driving the financial success of your company, right? That's number one. But here's the second piece of this that people always forget about. Most AEC organizations, and I'm talking about private organizations now, they rely on a huge amount of repeat work. Some of our clients, it's 90% or more. Think about that, 90% or more. What would make a client come back and work with you again? Well, their experience that they had on their last project, right? And who's typically the client contact on your projects? Well, it's the project manager. So the project manager is not only responsible for kind of bringing the projects in on time and on budget, which makes the company profitable, but they're also responsible for maintaining a relationship with your clients to bring in more projects and help the company grow. So you need to invest in your PMs at all costs, but you can't invest in your PMs if you don't know who they are. So that should be the number one focus of your development efforts, is understanding who your project managers are. And again, I'll mention that I do have a book coming out called Beyond PM Training, How to Build a Scalable AEC Project Management Ecosystem. And in the book, there will be a checklist of questions that you can kind of go through to really nail this down more. But I think what I've given you today can really get you going in the right way to get you on the track to identifying your project managers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to our channel here. We do put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help AEC professionals become better project managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.